good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Kathy Blakesley, and I work with Eide in their implementation group. And we look forward to this presentation with you. And Jason will be doing the majority of the actual presentations, and I'll let him introduce himself. Jason?
Hey everyone, I'm Jason Wagner. I'm a solution engineer at Eide, and prior to being a solution engineer, I actually implemented ERP software for over 20 years. So I've got experience in a lot of different ERP applications, including Epicor, Sage, Microsoft products. In the last probably 10 years, I focused primarily just on cloud applications, but I'll be driving the majority of the NetSuite presentation today, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Jason. And of course, we're going to start off the usual presentation with a disclaimer that neither myself or Jason here are meaning to provide professional accounting or other types of managerial advice during this. This is just a webinar to give you information on what NetSuite and Eide offer. Okay? And on we go. So one of the things, some of the objectives that we have in covering this is helping you determine if you've outgrown your system and how NetSuite might be able to make your life easier if that's the case. What do those processes look like, and exactly where do you start? And the upcoming slides touch on each of these. So some of the signs of outgrowing your system, I don't know how many of you out there are still moving bills around your offices to get manual signatures or collecting Excel spreadsheets from a variety of people to close your month end or even move your grant opportunities through. Do you have your accounting system being managed by local on-site people through a local server? And have you been victims of cyber attacks and ransomware? Or do you feel that you're at risk? And do you have a system that's starting to bog down on you? It can't manage the data that you're pushing through it. Your reports are taking a really long time or unable to process it all. And finally, do you have the ability to access data from any place, anytime? If you're home, our COVID shutdown certainly brought this to light when so many people needed to work from home. All of those people who were already on NetSuite seamlessly logged back in and continued their work. But for those of you who don't have access to online systems, it's probably more difficult for you to try to get some kind of a VPN login into your system when you're traveling. So those are some of the things that NetSuite is going to offer or could offer in your organization if you're experiencing some of these issues. So here we have the polling question, and Maya, I'm going to ask you to take this off. Thank you.
what's interesting about these five
Alrighty.
options.
And Kathy, did you want to see the results of this polling question?
I would love that. Thank you. Maya. So here we have the majority of the highest numbers here are for manual and paper systems. Thank you, Maya. And followed closely by fund and grant tracking. Yay. Okay. So those are our big items here for this particular group that we're talking about. And Maya, if we could.
Oh, you can continue it. You're good.
Okay, great. So one of the things you're going to see is NetSuite offers some very specific pre-configured dashboards with the functionality that the majority of their clients have expressed a need for. You're going to see when Jason is on the line, you can modify those. So they come with all of the items, grants, reporting on funds, your bank rec items, everything at your fingertips. And if you have more specific items that you need to see directly on a dashboard, you can modify that for each individual user on your dashboards. The other things you're going to see on your dashboards are access to the standard FASB statements, a statement of financial position, statement of activities, your cash flow statements, and the statement of functional expenses. So those are all available to you at the click of your finger on your dashboard. Within each of these, on your dashboard, you'll see primarily searches. However, at the top ribbon, you can see there are a number of areas to get reports. Most of the searches, as well as reports, offer drill down capabilities. And within those drill down capabilities, you can go directly to the source transactions. And on those source transactions, copies of the source documents can be maintained. So you can bring it up if you have questions. Or, for example, if you're having an audit, it can be pulled directly up and the source transaction reviewed at that time. NetSuite offers donor reporting, a significant amount of reports and searches covering all of the different giving statistics and restricted revenue and the ability to view release from restriction to see how much revenue has been recognized on that particular grant or program, the costs against it, and previously released from restriction to show you the current net assets available on a particular grant or program or grant within a program. The grant management capabilities provide you the ability to view grants from the time that they are an opportunity. They haven't even been awarded yet. So rather than having manual Excel spreadsheets with a number of different individuals who are tracking and applying for awards on grants, they can track that and enter it all into NetSuite. And from the time that that opportunity is awarded to you, with single clicks of your mouse, you can create sales orders and invoices and begin tracking the grant that you've received. It also gives you the opportunity to track grant milestones. And I don't know how many of you out there track grants and programs and have reporting deadlines that are due. Within NetSuite, you can create grant milestones, and those will give you an alert. You get to pick the period of time that you want. You want to be reminded in 7 days or 10 days before that deadline, or even a month before that deadline is up. It'll give you an alert, either send you an email or give you an alert directly on your NetSuite dashboard. And finally, NetSuite offers system audit tracking. Each event on each record and each transaction from the time that you create it, any modifications you make to it, or even deletions of records are tracked completely inside NetSuite. And finally, if you have intercompany requirements or maybe even funds that have to be held separate from the rest of your organization and you want to treat them as if they were a separate entity, NetSuite offers ease of recording and ease of reporting on the different entities that you are tracking. And rather than telling you about it, I'm going to let Jason go ahead and show his screen and give you a look-see of the actual product.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Let me flip over and show my screen here. And let me know when you can see my screen. You can see it okay, Kathy?
I can see NetSuite demo so far.
Not yet. Did you hit that button up top on the green slip?
There we go.
There
Got
we
it.
go.
There we go. All right, hopefully you can see my login screen now.
Yes.
All right, so NetSuite is a cloud-based application. It's one of the first cloud-based applications that ever hit the market on the ERP side. You can access NetSuite via your PC, tablet, phone, whatever you have in front of you that's got an internet connection, essentially. You can see I'm on netsuite.com, and I clicked on a login page where all of your users will have a user ID and password where they'll essentially log in within the application. What we're going to be looking at today is what's called their their social impact edition. Obviously, NetSuite's been around for a long time, and they've got companies running it that are manufacturing. They have ones that are running warehouse and distribution. They have ones that are more service-oriented. They've got hospitals. The social impact edition is geared entirely towards non-for-profits. So a lot of the data dimensions, a lot of the reporting is geared towards what NFPs need to see that's important to them. So what's nice about that is when you purchase NetSuite and you get the Social Impact Edition, is that a lot of these pre-configured dashboards that we're showing here on the screen when I log in come pre-configured, and these KPIs come pre-configured with the application on day one. So really, you can hit the ground running with like 95% of your configuration already done. You can see here on the very top, I'm logged in with the user where it's the controller role. And what it does is you have full ability to create dashboards and show reports and shortcuts to data elements and visualizations that are important to you. So in my example on this dashboard, you can see on the left-hand side, I've got a panel that just shows me different reminders that when I log into in the morning of things that are important to me. If I've got invoices overdue or any bills that need to be paid. You can see if I scroll down, I've got additional valuations where I can see, in this case, functional expenses that we've had. And again, you can very easily change those visualizations by just clicking on the charting here. I can also change the data metric as far as the timing goes to see, I can select, for this year, I could say for 3 fiscal years ago. Again, there's a lot of different data models that you can look at to see your information pertaining to your company. In the middle section here, I've got a lot of other KPIs. Again, you'll notice as I hover over these different blue sections, I get this little cursor where it allows me to drill down and view more information pertaining to it. So if I want to view, in this example, it's showing me restricted revenue where it's comparing my current month versus the prior month and shows them that change. If I want to see what that restricted revenue was of the $107,000, I can either left click on this particular one and it'll bring up this behind the scenes number of $107,000 on this screen, or I can right click and say I want to open this up in a different tab, which as you can see on the top pulls up my reporting that shows me what that restricted revenue is for the month of May. So you can see as I scroll down, I can see all the different donations that took place within my month of May. And again, I've got the little cursor where I can then drill down even further to see, I want to see this donation that was done for $800 by Lynn King. I can again right-click, open this in a new tab, and again, I can now view that particular donation that was done by Lynn. So I can see that the appeal that it was used on, the company that it was for. So if I have multiple subsidiaries in my environment, I can, when I book a transaction, I'm essentially selecting which subsidiary it's for. And then down below, it shows you all the pertinent information that pertains to that particular donation. So here's where we're marking that it's with donor restrictions, which program it's for. It's not necessarily tied to a grant at this particular time. So again, it allows you to get that drill down capability from essentially your home dashboard all the way down to the source transaction. So another good example of this would be like if I look at my receivables to date, there's 100K, so it's up 50%. So again, if I want to see, why did our open receivables almost double, again, I can right-click on this to view that $100,000 number, and I can view it now broken out by my receivables balance. So again, each particular report, this number is tied to reporting in the background. So again, these KPIs and these dashboards are all user definable. You do not need to be a programmer to write these things. I can move things around. So if I want to move this KPI meter to the middle section, it's a matter of just clicking and dragging where I want that to go. If I want to remove it, I can just click on the little snowman icon. I can remove the visualization from it. If I want to add new visualizations, again, I can just click on this little personalized button. And again, I can click and drag KPIs to where I want them to go. I can add recent records. I can add report snapshots. Again, it's very easy for a user to go and click and drag these visualizations on your dashboard. You'll also notice here in the top middle section, I've got shortcuts to the reporting that I use on a pretty frequent basis. So a couple of them I want to point out that are obviously very important to NFPs is the statement of activity. So I'm going to open up that one in a separate tab. I've got a statement of financial position report, and I've got a statement of functional expenses. So these are obviously reports that are pretty important to organizations that we run into on the NFP side. This report, again, by default, you'll notice it shows you all of your financial numbers for that particular report. On the bottom, it's got my filtering. So it's currently showing me January through May, what my activity was. If I want to change that period range, I can just select what period I want to run it from and through. I can select which subsidiary or company I want to run this report for. A lot of older systems, you have to log in and out of a company to run a report for that particular entity. With NetSuite, you're not really logging in and out of a company because it automatically is going to be there. So I can select which subsidiary I want to run it for by just clicking on which sub, hit refresh, and now I'm getting the numbers for that particular subsidiary alone. So again, you're not having to log in and out of a separate company to do that type of information. You'll also notice on the right-hand side here, I've got the current column set it's using. Is it saying, just show me the total numbers for January through May for my parent company? Well, maybe I want to break this out a little bit differently, where instead I want to view this by restriction. So if I come down here, you'll notice I can change my columns to be by grant, by program, by region, by restriction. So for example, if I choose restriction and I click refresh to make my columns be by restriction, now I'm viewing my statement of activity broken out by that restriction type. So again, it's very easy to change that. If I want to view it by program, I can select it to say run this by program. And now again, it's going to give me that information broken out by my programs across the top versus anywhere else. So again, within this one report, you've got the capability to create multiples. The other one that's very important to organizations, obviously, if I want to view this by period. So I want to see a floating, in this case, 5 months out for January through February, but I want to see this broken out by my different periods. Again, now when I do that, and I refresh the data set, now it's showing me what my revenue and expenses are broken out by my different accounting periods. Some other things that are very important is if I want to just filter this even more, you'll notice I can click on this little more or less button and I can add additional filters. So if I want to filter by constituent or department or by grant or by program, I can do that as well. Everybody's favorite within the accounting world is the little icon down here is to export to Excel. So again, all NetSuite reports have the ability to export the data set out into Excel. So if I want to do some additional modeling, do some forecasting, whatever it might be in Excel, and I want to pull this information out into Excel, it's very easy to do that by just clicking on there, and then I can pull that information out into Excel. Another one that's very important, that's very flexible within NetSuite, is this last icon here on the right. I can also then email these particular reports out as well to individuals, whether they're in the organization or not in the organization. So again, I can enter in who the recipients are. I can enter in the subject line of my message and put what's in the body of the email. I can also add additional attachments that I want to send to the email as well. So if I've got backup that I want to send, I can then hit send, which will then send that email to whoever I feel is important that needs to get this particular report at that time. So again, that's just an example of just the statement of activity report. So if I close this one, here's my statement of financial position. So again, you'll notice it's got the same look and feel. On the bottom, I've got my same filtering where it's showing it as of May 2023. If I want to view it instead what it was as of April, I can change it to be as of April, and that'll show the data elements within what it was as of April. And again, you've got that same capability where I can change the column set. I've got the same capabilities down below where I can email, export, and so forth. So again, that's your statement of financial position. And then the last one report I want to show here as well is that statement of functional expense, where again, it allows you to view that information showing it that way. So if I choose it instead, in this case, let's choose it by grant, and I refresh it. Now I'm viewing my functional expenses broken out by my individual grants that I have in there. Now mine are named just grant 1, grant 2, grant 3. Obviously in your environment, your scenario, you'll actually have titles of what your grants are versus what my generic ones say in my demo environment that just say grant 1 through 4. So that kind of gives you a high-level view of what those different reporting elements look like. Some other things, obviously that's just some of the reports you've got within NetSuite. If I go under this NFP Financial Center, you'll notice there's a lot of other reports that I haven't shown. And again, these are some things that we cover, obviously, when we go through training, when we do demonstrations of the product to prospects. We kind of go through all of those key reports that are important to your organization. So again, this kind of gives you an idea of a lot of the other different reports that you've got within there. Another component that's really important with NFPs lately is not only tracking grants, but also tracking your grant opportunities. So maybe you signed up for a grant, but you haven't been approved for it yet. By having grant opportunities, what this allows, it's almost like having a CRM for grants. So I can now track all of the grants that we have out there, and I can view the status of them. So I can see that these are in negotiation, these are in discussion, these are in the proposal stage. Again, I can flag them with what probability it will be that we'll get that particular grant, and then what the projected total is of that grant. So again, a lot of these fields that you see within NetSuite, if I open up one of these opportunities, is these screens and the fields you see here are essentially very customizable by you. If I want to move things around on the screen, I can very easily do that. If I want to add additional fields, let's say there's some additional attributes I want to capture on my opportunities, it's very easy to create an additional field, that whether it be a drop-down, a free-form text. And then what's nice is all of those custom fields are created in a separate layer. So when you do an upgrade of NetSuite, it just happens automatically with those customization and custom fields passed along with the upgrade. So in this example, you can see I've got a grant opportunity. I've got who the constituent is of that particular one. The data was created. Again, the expected date that we're expecting to close on this grant. And then down below here, you can see the actual details of that particular grant. So again, it's very nice to track those particular grants within the application and see that visibility to not only just active grants, but also ones that you've signed up to become on the record for too as well. So I'm going to flip over and I'm going to go to my administrator role, and I would like to show you just a grant creation, because my administrator role has actual access to create a grant. So I'm going to go under grant management, and I'm going to go ahead and get a listing of my grants. And in my example, again, you can see I've got just a few grants out there. I've got very generic names, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up this grant, that my Rainbow Freedom Foundation one, and pull this one up and kind of give you an idea of what grants look like. You'll notice that you define what that name is. You can associate a parent grant that's tied to it. You can enter it as a description, total amount of the grant, again, some information that's tied to it. Again, if there's information I want to track that's pertinent to my organization that you don't see on this screen, again, you can see I can click on this customized form area and I can add those data elements to my screen as well. So there's additional things I want to track. I've got start dates of the grant, end dates of the grant, the status of it, and then again down below you get your primary information tied to the grant. You know, is it multi-year, single year, that kind of thing. On the bottom here, I've got a milestones button, and the milestones allows you to track key milestone dates pertaining to this particular grant. So you can create what type of milestone it is, and you can define, obviously you define what those milestone types are. You can then associate dates to those milestones, who that particular milestone is assigned to, so then they can view that information on their dashboard, so if they've got milestones coming up. I can also click under related records, and this information is going to give you all information that's pertinent to this particular grant. So the net assets area is going to show me the net asset section. The invoices area is going to show me any invoicing that we've done that pertains to this particular grant. So again, I can see all of those AR invoices and billings that we've done. I can view the expenses that we've booked on the payable side or GL side, as an example, that I've tied to this particular grant as well. So you can see I've got some AP bills that have been entered in that are tied to this particular grant, and I've also got some employee expenses that were submitted as well that are also tied to that grant. So again, you've got that full visibility on how a grant is doing and how the funds are being spent directly from the grant level itself. So that's essentially how that grant screen looks like. So the other component of this is, if I flip over and I look at my milestones, this is again where I can then view those different milestones and get those visualizations, see what's upcoming, what's outstanding, and kind of manage those grants from there as well. So that's essentially a very high-level view of what this non-for-profit edition looks like within NetSuite. Again, the key component here is that it has the social impact edition that comes with all of these KPIs pre-built. So all you're really doing is loading your chart of accounts, loading the grants and programs, and hitting the ground running. So let me stop sharing this particular screen and go back to this PowerPoint. And Kathy, can you confirm that you can see the PowerPoint presentation again?
Yes, we still can.
Okay. So after seeing, what that NetSuite demonstration looks like, one of the things that, we saw in that prior one is what are the things that are key to you, and by looking at NetSuite, what from what you saw, piques your interest the most. A lot of people are looking at different ERP systems for different reasons. Some it's because that their application is outdated and it's going to be expired. Some is reporting, some is manual things. Just take a minute here to, I'm curious to see what everybody has as far as what from you just saw piques your interest the most.
All right. And Jason, it looks like we have a Q&A in there for you stating, can you mark some of the grant information as required and some as optional?
Yes. So that was with the fields you said?
Can you mark some of the grant information as required and some as optional? You said with the fields?
Yeah, you can. I'll show it to you in the end. I can flip back, but you can mark it. Some of the fields have a little asterisk next to them that stated that particular field is required. So yes, you can mark those particular fields as required. What's also nice is that there's field level help that you can modify. So if you want to put in certain syntax that reminds users of what they need to enter into that field to give them kind of some guidance, you can also alter that field level help as well and customize it. So,
thank you. And I'm going to leave this polling question up for a few more moments and then we will continue. Remember, if you are here for CPE credit, please make sure you are answering these polling questions.
Yeah. Yeah, the intercompany accounting one is important, obviously, for a lot of organizations when you have multiple subsidiaries, and you need to get, not only just intercompany transactions to enter in, but having that consolidated financial statement without having to do manual consolidations outside of the system. NetSuite being in one database, one application, that definitely helps. So this essentially shows our reasoning as far as what's most exciting. So yeah, donor grant tracking is fantastic within NetSuite. So it's nice when you have an application that's built for non-for-profits. Whereas if you look at like Great Plains and Sage, some of those products, they're built for, it's just a general umbrella, right? And then you still have to rename fields and label things to fit donor and grant tracking. So, having that pre-built model set is great. So you kind of hit that ground running. So that was number one there on the list. Looks like the second one is that financial drill down and dashboarding. So those kind of go hand in hand, obviously. Having the ability to have dashboards, and from there, obviously, drill down to the underlying transactions. Again, that's a fantastic reasoning for this. And again, having the ability to do that through a browser, not having to VPN, not having to worry about hardware, backups, things like that. Having it in the cloud is a great reasoning for that. And then it looks like the last one, intercompany accounting, is kind of low. And I figured that may be the case because not everybody's got multiple subsidiaries. I'm sure it's more important for the companies that have more than one. And then lastly, the accessibility of required statements. So again, having those predefined formats that are important to non-for-profits, having them pre-built is again a key component, not having to create those manually or do any adjustments outside of the system. So great. I appreciate the feedback there on those. So next question there is, have you been through a system implementation before in the past? So obviously, Eide Bailey, we're an audit company initially, and we now have a technology arm where we do a lot of different implementations from cybersecurity to integration to data modeling to ERP implementation. So some people have been through an implementation before and some have not, and you may be new to, what's the process that you go through. So, this is going to kind of give us an understanding of, how many people have gone through this process before. Good, bad, or ugly. Sometimes they're great. Sometimes they can go bad and be rough, but we're always curious to see, how it's been with everybody that's out there. With NetSuite, obviously it's nice as being on the cloud is, once you purchase NetSuite, your instance is partitioned within a day, and you can start configuring it. Whereas with the legacy systems that I grew up with implementing, you had to get a server, you had to get the database software, you had to get VPN stuff. You had to do a lot of things before you could actually start configuring the application. You had to do the software installation. So it's a lot easier now with cloud applications today.
Awesome. And I'll leave this polling question up for a few more moments, everyone. Again, if you are here for CPE credit, make sure you are answering these polling questions to receive your credit and your certificate. All right, and Jason, would you like to see the results?
Yeah, let's see it. Yeah, so it's pretty split. So that sounds pretty typical. Obviously, I can't hear you guys through the speakers because everybody's muted, but obviously everybody could have a different experience with implementations. It varies a lot by partner and by software vendor by vendor. Eide Bailey, we work our best. We've done a lot of implementations where we try to make that process as seamless and smooth as possible. So I definitely, again, appreciate the feedback there. All right, so, to kind of talk about Eide Bailey and what we do with our clients to help them through this process. This is really the 6 steps that we typically go through in helping prospects look at NetSuite. Whether they purchase NetSuite or not, this is our process, right? So the first step is really your initial contact to us, reaching out to us and saying, I'm interested. I'd like to see what it looks like. I'd like to get at least ballpark numbers to see maybe for next year, is this something that we could get in the budget? We just want high-level numbers right now, but we don't need to look right now. That initial contact is understanding, who to reach out to, what do we look at there? The second step there is that discovery call. This would be with somebody like myself, where we would have an hour-long conversation where I would ask you pertinent questions relating to your business. This is more me listening to you talk about what works best and what doesn't work with your current system. We talk about integrations. Do you have integrations with payroll? Do we have integrations with any POS system? We have discussions like that. We talk about what are you on currently. We find out what functionality do you need in the ERP application. And really what that helps me do is it helps me scope the amount of work and what edition of NetSuite you would need, what modules you would need, what we would need to configure to make sure that we solve all of those problems that you don't like today with a product like NetSuite. So after that discovery call, the next deliverable back to us, to you, right after that is going to be that high-level investment summary. So we have, a quick 30-minute conversation where we go through, this is what we're thinking it would be based upon the number of users you stated, the functionality that you want to do, the pain points you have. This is what the ballpark software would be for software and as well as implementation, because they're two separate, obviously, kind of things. So kind of give you that high-level investment summary. So we make sure that, does it make sense for us to continue? Like, are we within reason on your budget and what you're thinking? If we're thinking yes, we look good, now we kind of go to that customized demonstration. So myself or one of the other solution engineers at Eide would then go through a very customized demonstration of NetSuite with you. Typically, they're anywhere between 3 and 4.5 hours. So we literally go through financial statements, the chart of accounts, grant creation, program creation. We go through all of the gamut to make sure you are understanding how the application works, to kind of give you that day in the life of, if I bought NetSuite, what would this look like, right? So again, we want to make sure that you're comfortable with how the application looks. After that demonstration is done, the last step then is, or the second last step is the solution summary, where we talk about what did we see, did we learn anything different from the demonstration that we need to tweak? If so, then we'll alter what our estimates are. Maybe we need to add users or drop users based upon what we saw. And we kind of give you that final software and implementation cost of what we think it's going to be. And then lastly then is we'll send over formal contract review. You would get one from Oracle NetSuite and you would get one from Eide for the services. And we essentially work hand in hand with NetSuite. We have our dedicated Oracle NetSuite people that work with Eide alone. And they're our representatives, so we work with our clients to make sure we can get you, the best cost from NetSuite as we can. So that's essentially what that process looks like on our prospect side. So if you're, again, how that looks if you're looking to move or even curious to what the cost is, that's kind of what the steps are. And again, this is a process that we do not charge for, nor should any other vendor for that matter that you're looking to possibly look at for ERP software replacement. All right, let me flip to the next slide. And the next step then is, how does an implementation look, right? What are the steps we go through? So the first step there is just the initiate phase. So initiate is, you sign off on contracts, you say, yes, I'm excited about NetSuite, I'm excited about Eide, I want to move forward, let's go forward. The first phase is more of an internal process on initiate side, where it's more of myself, like the solution engineers, working with the delivery group to make sure that we dump all of the information that we learned in that sales process to make sure that they go in understanding what the scope of work is that we talked about during the entire demonstration process and discovery process. So it's kind of that handoff part. The next part there is the planning phase, which is the next two. And again, this is where you'll meet your delivery team. You'll discuss the important configuration items like your chart of accounts, your different dimensions and how you want to slice and dice financial statements. They'll get that preliminary bricks figured out on how you want to configure NetSuite. You'll also receive import templates from the delivery team so you can start pulling the data out of your current ERP system, like vendors, customers, chart of accounts, and start scrubbing essentially that data before we bring it into NetSuite. So it gives you that chance to clean up any old records that you don't need, you do not want to bring over anymore, or clean up any corrupt data that may have information in the wrong spots. Also, the last thing during that planning phase is you really discuss the scope and determine what is your target cutover date. Like, are we shooting for December 1st, November 1st, October 1st? Like, what is the date we're targeting? And then from there, we come up with what that project plan looks like, which now the next phase there is execute. So you can see majority of the time is spent during that execute phase. This is where, again, the first thing you're going to end up doing during this is we have system configuration settings with your main project group, where we'll start configuring, turning checkboxes on and off, selecting, do we want to use workflows? Do we want to use approvals within the system? So we kind of go through all of that configuration stuff with you and whoever is going to be leading that particular function within your organization, whether it be purchasing, accounting, grant management, all that kind of thing. What we also do during the execute phase is we load that master data, like your chart of accounts, vendors, all that master data that's not really transactional. It's more just your master data. We also configure your dashboards and workflows during this session to make sure that the reporting you need is there. We'll format your business documents, like any invoicing, the accounts payable check, if you send out statements, things like that. We format those, make sure your logo's on there and we're all good to go. And then also, lastly, obviously in the execute phase, that's very important, is we perform user testing. Not where we're testing necessarily your users and giving them a grade, but what we do is we make sure that we take live transactions that you do today in your current legacy system, and we also enter them into NetSuite. It's not really a parallel. It's more just doing a test of kicking the tires, making sure that the transactions you entered in also are flowing through NetSuite and your users are comfortable with that process, right? And then lastly, then, is we do formal training. Eide Bailly does formal training that we record on your data. So the key part there is it allows you to, as you onboard new staff, you'll have that training videos available to give your staff to say, here's the application that we have, here's the training videos, go at it. So again, that training is very important and very critical to obviously make sure your implementation goes great. The second last one there is close, which essentially means your cutover or go live date. Again, this is where we load your master data. So, not master data, sorry, where we perform your live transactions. So this is where we'll load your open payables, open receivables, your grant information to date. We'll load historical general ledger. So again, there's a lot of different options that go with loading historical GL. You can load it in detail or you can load it in summary. So again, that's something that we'll have determined what your plan of action is prior to getting to that phase. Once we have your historical, GL loaded, AP and AR aging loaded, outstanding checks and deposits, once that's loaded, we then make sure that we reconcile and balance NetSuite to your prior system. Before a transaction is entered, we make sure we reconcile first. Once that's done, now we move more into that nurture phase, where Eide Bailly, we're there for your first check run, your first invoicing, your first month-end close. We want to make sure that you're comfortable. Typically, by the time you go through your first month, your users have been playing with NetSuite already for a few months, that it's not learning all over again on day one, because they've gone through a lot of different phases and getting training all throughout the process, that really the cutover date is just a formality. Now we're just starting to use NetSuite on an everyday basis versus periodically. So really that's the phase that we go through to make sure that at the end of the day, that when Eide Bailly implementation is done on a NetSuite, that you're fully functioning and you're self-supportive of your ERP application. Obviously, we don't go away. If you need anything, you can obviously reach out to us as well as Oracle NetSuite for any other support items you may run into. But that's essentially what our implementation methodology looks like. As far as some different success stories that we've got, this is kind of highlights one. Again, this is going to be in that deck that you can pull down. But this kind of gives you one that we did with the Children's Center Utah. Again, just kind of get some different data elements of what was important to them, how NetSuite solves some of their problems that they were having in the past. Again, just one of our success stories that we've got in the NFP section. This slide, again, gives you some other logos of some NFPs that we've done as well. The middle section there talks about a little bit of the profiles of ones that we've run into and why they've switched from their legacy system to NetSuite. Again, one of the top twos there is that manual grant management and fund management. Everybody kind of stated that was one of their higher ups as well. Again, that was no different with everybody else that we've converted on the NFP side. Spreadsheets galore. Everybody that we had on the NFP side has tons of spreadsheets where they're tracking grants, expenditures, all through spreadsheets, and they wanted to get away from that. So again, having that spreadsheet, having that gone is another big thing. Security needs, that's a big one. Obviously, having it on the cloud, not having it internally where you could risk with ransomware, the system going down, having it on the cloud through an Oracle database, having that security blanket is a big thing for people as well. And some of the systems that people were running prior to going on to NetSuite, some of the options that we saw were Blackbaud, QuickBooks, and Dynamics GP were some of the few that we saw that we migrated from to NetSuite. So what's next? Who to contact? If you want to have an initial conversation and get ballpark numbers and kind of go through this process. Tom Owens he kind of leads our NetSuite sales group. That has his contact information there. It's towens@eidebailey.com and his phone number. So again, if you have any follow-up and you want to reach out to him to get some preliminary talks going, he'd be the right one to reach out to contact. And then again, Maya, are there any other questions within the chatter area?
There is one in the Q&A box that says, we moved to a new system and about 2 to 3 weeks of input was not moved over. Would that be a problem?
And 2 to 3 weeks of input was not moved over.
Yeah, I think I'm going to tackle that one because I'm the person on the call that's doing implementations. And what I would have to say about the implementation that you were doing, oftentimes we bring on net change trial balances, which would not include details of certain weeks. So the answer to that question, it would be best determined when you're comparing your financial statements, and if you're actually missing data that creates a general ledger impact or changes the values of your net assets in any way, then you're going to need to go back and look at those transactions and make sure that you get them in. And with this amount of information, it's really as much as we could say.
Yeah, you may want to reach out to whoever your implementation partner was to make sure that they pull and load those 2 to 3 weeks of data. I'm assuming that the 2 to 3 weeks of input means that input that you did in your legacy system that wasn't migrated over. You would definitely need to reach out to your partner or load. I'm not sure what type of entries it was either. If it was AP, billing, it depends on the type of transaction. If it was just journal entry input, then you could just journal entry that activity into NetSuite or whatever program you went on to as well. But again, I would reach out to your partner, or if you want to have a follow-up conversation with Kathy or myself, I'll put up our information here as well. But here's the next polling question here. So again, would you, obviously from what you saw today, are you at a spot in your organization where you'd like to start looking and get an understanding of what those costs are? Again, Eide Bailey, we want to make sure that our clients are taken care of, and we want to make sure that whatever we're looking at is a fit, right? So it's not a very pushy sales process. We want to make sure we understand your business. We want to make sure that NetSuite's a good fit just as much as you do. We don't want to do the whole, round peg in a square hole ourselves. So kind of having that initial conversation, that initial discovery to understand what you're using today and what those pain points are, it could definitely help. And the worst case scenario or worst case scenario is you come out of it understanding, what the cost is for a NetSuite. So if a year or two down the line it might be, and you decide to move, at least you have an idea of what that cost is. So again, we can definitely help in that regard.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
And we can definitely bring up your contact information now.
Yep. So here's Kathy and I's contact information. Again, if anybody wants to reach out to us directly for any follow-up questions, we're more than happy to answer those as well. Kathy is, again, more on the delivery side. I'm more on the solution engineering side. I've implemented NetSuite as well, so I think either one of us can answer probably some implementation questions. If I don't know the answer, I could pass on to Kathy as well, but if you're looking more for pricing and things like that, I would probably reach out to either Tom or myself would be the best route to go. So we really appreciate your time, and I hope you got some valuable information out of this, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of their weeks.